Back again for episode 3 of the Econo-Motor Hunt. Once again, we're definitely under the $25 limit. Some are significantly under that. Viewers of episode 2 know that for whatever reason, the Carisma gearbox does not fit 540s that have torque sleeves on them, which is only a tiny problem because only 2 of these motors have torque sleeves on them. This here, episode 3, is the 5-slot 550s. I apologize if in the previous episode, if the brain-mouth interface was continually confusing pole with slot. I'll probably continue to do that today. It just seems like a thing about how my mind works. So this should be fairly interesting. We've got the Crawlmaster Sport 8-turn, which is pretty much as hot of a 550 crawler-specific motor as you can get. This one was not in the original lineup. I forgot that it was a thing. The Reedy 14-turn 5-slot, which is the OE motor in the Ecto, the Element Ecto. Of course, the motor that had been running in here, the Rudog 16-turn 5-slot, and then closing it out with the one that I'm really most anxious to see, which is why I'm saving it for last, the Power Wheels motor. There's definitely more magnet here. It's really difficult to keep these guys from sticking together. You might also notice the Vanimal looks a little different today. He was very dusty and dirty from the testing and rolling over he's been doing, so I thought, oh, I'll just give that a wipe down with a microfiber. And wherever the microfiber caught on a decal, it just started to pull it off. So it's down to about, I think there's maybe 8 stickers left on it. I kind of prefer it. I kind of prefer it just gray. It's going to get a paint job at some point. It's going to get some decals on it. It's going to look nice. But for right now, it's a test mule, and it's got 4 more motors to do today. As in the previous episodes, we start hot and move, which I assume will be least torque, and we move towards what I assume will be the mildest. So it's 8-turn, then the 14, then the 16, and then the Power Wheels motor. So I will get this 8-turn Crawlmaster stuck in there, and we'll get it out there. So here we are, as mentioned in the intro, the Crawlmaster Sport 550 8-turn is the hottest motor in this test, and has definitely proved to be so. Just driving it back here, I don't expect a lot in the area of torque from this, but I am anxious to see how it performs. Low speed control is surprisingly good. Let's see if I can get onto the board a little easier. I cannot. I had to offer a little assistance there. And I'm still getting no grip. There we are. I guess it's just the dust I pick up on the tires. All right, that's not bad in terms of drag brake. I really expected it to just roll a lot more. All right, let's put some trim in it. It's pretty torquey. That's holding at 28 clicks, whereas the Trailmaster 27-turn held at 26. And we get forward motion at looks like 40. So this is proving to be a little torqueier than the Trailmaster, which is not at all what I expected. So this is a refreshing surprise. So I think this is already steering me towards believing that the Crawlmaster, not a bad notion, and I'm not a big 5-slot guy for whatever reason. So let us see. Let's pivot this over and see how it feels. You know, torque-wise, it does better than I thought it would. Low speed control is good. I mean, obviously, it's not as fine as the 27 turn. Again, I think, this is just me, I think memory-wise, I think an 8-turn 5-slot is a 21-turn 3-slot, somewhere in that area. So I can't be too harsh in any judgment of this motor because, I mean, it is an 8-slot. And the way this gearbox is in the Carisma, it doesn't really want anything this hot in it. Having some early morning issues getting to the top. Most of the tested motors would have been to the top already. I keep getting hung up. Yeah, this goes back to, like, in pure torque, it seems like it's on par with the Trailmaster 27, but it lacks fidelity, is what I feel like. And that is some RPM. I don't want it to sound like I'm coming out here pre-disliking the 8-turn Crawlmaster Sport, or Crawlmaster Sports in general. It just, the drag brake is decent, but there's something about the feel of this motor. I have a pretty light trigger finger, so I feel like I can manipulate it pretty well. And it just, perhaps it's part of the 8-turn, but I don't know if I'm willing to spend another 20 bucks to see if a lower turn would feel better. Like something maybe like a 16. I've just never liked how this motor feels. And the gear reduction, as I mentioned, the gear reduction in the Carisma is not super low. So this motor is exceptionally hot in this truck. Let's see exactly how hot. I will take it around the 220 and see what kind of time it puts down. The Crawlmaster Sport 550 8-turn covers the 220 foot in 20.15 seconds. Far and away the fastest, and unsurprisingly so. Perhaps the most unsurprising revelation of the day. For an 8-turn, its low speed control is good. It is very good. But I feel like, at this point, I feel like I've wheeled enough motors in close proximity to each other that I can feel the lack of torque. Like there is less torque in this motor. The drag brake, quite good, but not great. And like I say, that says nothing about the Crawlmaster Sport. That just says that if you have an 8-turn 550, and potentially with the removal of its torque sleeve, it's not going to produce a lot of torque. Particularly in a rig without a lot of gear reduction. And this rig does not have a lot of gear reduction. So if anything, if you have something with a lot of gear reduction, a motor with turns this high might be okay. It's definitely not something for a 2-speed. This particular motor spent some time in the TRX4 Defender with the 2-speed, and second gear is ludicrous. First gear is not low enough, and there's a big gap between first and second gears in a TRX4. So I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm sure there's a perfect situation out there for a Crawlmaster Sport 558 turn, but I don't own it. So this motor is not really suited to my fleet or how I drive. So I guess I prejudge it a little bit. Anyhow, that's all I've got to say about that. So we will move on to the next less hot motor in today's testing. Here now, second up on the day, the Reedy 14-turn 5-slot. I'm going to hit the ramp here with a little bit of extra sauce because getting out of the dirt seems important. Come on. All right. Do that little drag brake check. Less than what the A-turn had. So there's stronger magnets in the Holmes. I was not blown away by this motor when it was in the Ecto, and the Ecto was out of the box was lighter than the Carisma. All right, it is holding at 32, holding pretty well. We have forward motion at 46. So that's a relatively linear step down from the 8-turn. Now you would think that the 14-turn should have more torque, but I think the Holmes has a little bit more sauce put into it. It's a better motor. Let's this thing down. Head over. What do we have to offer, Reedy? The low is low, but I don't. There's a smoothness drop here, like some amounts of trigger input you don't really get anything. Like almost like it has little dead bands. So I think I keep losing radio for just a moment. Maybe everything is crammed in here a little too tightly. Maybe I don't have the ESC plug in all the way. I'm not hating the Reedy 5-slot 14-turn. It definitely feels better in this gearbox than it did in the other, but that's a very conditional comparison there. It does not have enough drag brake. The 8-turn tested just before this had more. This does not have the least drag brake of anything tested, but it's definitely in the bottom of the field. I don't know if it was discernible on video, but right there was just a moment of, like, I gave throttle and didn't get anything, and then the wheels kind of clawed for a second. As I said, not an awful motor, but I think if you're buying one and didn't get one as RTR, I think the Reedy is right around the same price point as a Crawlmaster or a Trailmaster. And I definitely don't prefer this motor over a Crawlmaster or a Trailmaster. It feels much like any other, well, Amazon generic 550, but as it's a 5-slot and not a 3-slot, it has less torque. It's supposed to be smooth. Okay, let's break this down. It feels like a 3-slot without the torque of a 3-slot. Like, it doesn't have the smoothness generally associated with a 5-slot. And it doesn't have enough to hold it. All right, so around the 220, final thoughts. The Reedy 14-turn 5-slot finishes the 220 foot in 23.68 seconds. And I will have to note, this is not in the video, but it is the loudest motor so far tested. It sounds kind of like someone running a vacuum in the next room. Now, yes, it is under a big van, so that's not going to help, but just surprisingly loud. I guess because this is one of those, does it have an internal fan? Yes. So maybe the fan is just louder than the fans in other 550s. This motor, it lacks the smoothness that I would expect, and it has about the same amount of operable drag brake as a Mabuchi 540. Like, look at that. It's holding because it's on a rock there, but if we get past the rock, it's just straight down. Maybe this is why I didn't like it as an RTR. It acts like it's a 540 disguised as a 550. I don't know if it's weaker magnets. I don't know if it has a shorter rotor. I don't know what it is, but this motor is not smooth enough to compete with 5 slots. It has less torque than it should at a 14 turn, even in 5 slot. Man, I had a Reedy Firehawk in there somewhere. I should have tested a vintage 540 Firehawk, but I can't find it. Yeah, I don't know. This motor it's lukewarm. I don't dislike it enough to hate it. I don't like it enough to like it. It is unremarkable, and I don't think it performs to the specs printed on the can. It doesn't act like a 14 turn. It doesn't act like a 5 slot. It doesn't have the torque of a 550. I don't know. If today has a winner, I haven't found it yet, but if today has a loser, I think I have. So, on to the next one. Here is the return of the Rudog 16-turn 5-slot 550. This was the motor that went in while I was waiting for the Crawlmaster to arrive. And let's get up there. There we are. And I would put the drag brake definitely above the Reedy, maybe a little bit below the Crawlmaster. Holmes put some strong magnets in those cheap $20 motors, I tell you what. Good smoothness. I did note this thing has the predicted 5-slot smoothness. It holds at 28. So the same as the Reedy. And we get forward motion at 42. Same as the Reedy. So this guy is performing torque-wise the same as the 14-turn Reedy. But what will that do for the smoothness? Let that continue to roll down. Pivot over here to the slick rock. Just going to guess now. Should be, I'm going to say under 30 but above 27 for the 220. Probably 28 seconds. See, much better drag brake than the Reedy in real world testing. I feel like everything today is just very dusty. I've been dragging a lot of fine dust around, running the same obstacle over and over again. See, that's good hold. That's good hold for a 5 slot. The Rudog is not bad at all. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's missing something. Like, it does not have the je ne sais quoi. But it holds well. And at this point, due to torque sleeve issues, I mean, there's a 50-50 chance the Rudog just stays in the Vanimal, because that's pretty good. And low speed, that's very good. I don't feel like I need to sing praises on the Rudog. It doesn't blow me away, but it is very smooth and very quiet. Try the bump. Yeah, the bump is really good. Like, it's very smooth. This, of the three so far, really behaves like a 5 slot. This guy acts like a 5 slot. And I like that. I like this amount of smoothness. I like this amount of drag brake. That's a good hold. It was actually hold, let's see. Can I get the 3-wheel hold? Yeah, that driver's side front is not touching anything. So I think Rudog might be, I don't know, seasoning in a little. I am quite likely going to go to a larger spur in here, and we'll see if that helps at all. But for testing, it's got to stay with the 83. Got to keep at least some semblance of an even footing. It still amazes me how stable the Vanimal is. It is tough to upset. So 220. Final thoughts on this one. If we're just going straight off of numbers on a paper, a 16 turn should be about half as fast as an 8 turn. And it was definitely in the neighborhood of half as fast. But I don't need the 8 turn amount of speed. What I need is this amount of speed. And I need smoothness. And I need the motor's ability to hold the rig in place when I let go of the throttle. And this mostly does that. And also, you might be able to detect, when I hand it over to drag brake, the roll is slow. And it's slow to start. It doesn't just cut loose. Wow, yeah, I can see the dust kicking there. It's a nice, slow, like, basically that right there this is the least amount of drag brake that I want. I realize I've been spoiled by Castle Slates, which are like throwing an anchor out. Like, it just stops. You can hold that thing on 2 wheels. You can do stoppies with a slate in there. But at the same time, I'm trying to maintain some semblance of sanity, and I'm not going to put $175 worth of motor and speed control into every rig I own. They don't need it. I don't think the Vanimal needs it. The Vanimal can absolutely get away with a $60 speed control motor combo, because it does remarkably well on a $22, $23, heck, under $20 brushed motor. So on the day, this is my favorite so far. As I've said, I'm very curious to find out what a Power Wheels motor can do, a Johnson 550, but I don't expect it to have the sort of controllability that this motor does. I mean, it would be nice if it surprised me, but I don't think it will. Either way, we're all going to find out right now. And here we are. We've arrived. This is where I wanted to be. I don't know what to expect. I'm tingling in excitement at the prospect of what a $13 Power Wheels motor. I think this one was actually a Peg Parego replacement motor, but you know, they're all the same guts. So let's give it a little zoot to get it up out of the dirt. And it's at least as good as any motor that's been up the ramp today. It's got a little odd noise when it rolls back. Let's trim it in. Like all the others of the day, it's holding at 26. And forward motion at 42. So they've all been pretty much the same. So strength-wise, of all the motors tested, the Trailmaster Sport was the strongest. 3-pole, 27-turn, the strongest. That is not bad. That's on par with the others. So let's see how its smoothness stacks up. And obviously its low speed control. Okay, I'll tell you right now. This is obviously a 3-pole motor. There I go. This is obviously a 3-slot motor. I don't think they're going to put a 5-slot motor in a child's ride-along Barbie Jeep. But the controllability is better than the Reedy. The smoothness is better than the Reedy. The drag brake is significantly better. This drag brake is on par with the Trailmaster. If I would stop getting the pumpkin hung up on that rock, can I make a right turn without rolling this over? Yes. The Vanimal doesn't like to roll over. It just wants to stay wheels down. So we'll take a straight gut shot here. If we can get a little bite through the dust. I'm going to go beyond saying that I'm pleasantly surprised to that I'm blown away. Like, here she comes. Has to be in every video now. I mean, they're all being tested, so they're all on the same gearing. But I think it could use a little less gear. It is. I'm genuinely surprised with how good it is. It's very quiet. And the Peg Parego / Power Wheels replacement motor is rated for 12 volts because that's what they run on, 12-volt lead-acid batteries. So if you're running 3S, these motors would love it. I don't know how much they would care for 2S. The Vanimal, again, does not like to flip over. Yeah, this obstacle at this point is so dusty. It is well beyond slick rock now, and it's slippery rock now. So the amount of drag brake this is exhibiting is... And also, as I pointed out in episode 1, I took out any assistance from the radio. So there's no throttle curve, there's no throttle expo. Look at that. That's good hold. I have to put this in front of the Rudog. All right, 220 foot. Final thoughts. I'm going to do some guesstimate here as the Peg Perego Power Wheels motor did the 220 in 35.17 seconds, which is, if memory serves, very close to what the Rudog did it in. So a 16-turn 5-slot is what in 3-slot? 27? It's maybe a 27 turn, thereabouts. What I do know is it is unspeakably smooth for what it is. Apparently the magnets are pretty strong. You know, they do have to push 40-pound plastic Jeeps. Low speed control is right there. Drag brake is very nearly as good as the Trailmaster. It is the quietest motor tested. With this mic, you probably can't hear it at all. Let's give a little outdoor exhibition. There she is. There's the tip in. I mean, look at that. No complaints at all. I don't get it. Look at it's how is a Johnson silver can no name 550 of unknown turns and everything else? How about the diagonal line that we don't try because we just roll over on that line? Like it's got claws. I mean, I wanted to be pleasantly surprised by this, and let's put it on the bench and wrap it up.
I don't know how well this will translate, but I just wanted to get a little quick run here. You ever heard that sound before? If you've had kids, you've heard that sound before. It sounds like a Power Wheels. So I guess in a Power Wheels, that sound isn't from the plastic gearbox, it's actually from the motor. Anyway, let's wrap it up.
That's a wrap on episode 3 and the 550 5-slots, which I know there's a 99.99% chance that's not a 5-slot. But of the 3 that are indeed 5-slots, I would go like that. I would go the Rudog in the 16-turn. I think if the Crawlmaster was a 16-turn like this, it would go like that. Now, take into consideration, it is roughly the same amount of money for that motor and that motor. They're both on bearings. There's a bigger bearing in the Crawlmaster, if that's something that matters to you. This is an open-end rebuildable, if that's something that matters to you. You get to solder both leads onto one side of the motor, which tends to make things a bit cleaner. Their magnets are all very strong. They want to stick to each other. This is an RTR motor, and it behaves like an RTR motor. It is a 550 that acts like a 540 in every way. This is a very good motor. I don't really have a list of complaints about it. But at the end of the day, this motor and the Power Wheels motor are very close, but the Power Wheels motor has the same amount of smoothness, but with more torque. I mean, there's a little initial, when it first tips in, you have to give it a little more goose. Right there, see? But that's with nothing dialed in, nothing set in. It's that smooth. You can, and it's so quiet. When it first starts moving, you hear like a click. That's the drive shafts taking up the slack in the drive shafts. It's all you can hear. When you drive it around with no body on it, on dirt, you can just hear the sounds of the wheels scrubbing against the dirt. To some people, quietness of a motor isn't as big of an obsession as it is with me. But this thing, it makes, it's so very quiet. Between these four, for me, honestly, despite the fact that you have to use a punch to get the factory swaged on 10-tooth pinion, you have to attack it with a file to put a conventional pinion. You have to file the swage marks off so you can get the pinion on there. Of these four, if they were all the exact same price, if it was 20, 20, 20, 20, I would buy that one. I would buy the Johnson. This has bearings, this has bearings, this has bushings, this certainly has bushings. It doesn't matter. At that price, with that smoothness and that amount of hold, that motor is worth double the $13 or so that I paid for it. So at the end of the day, if I was going to make a recommendation and say which motor to buy, well, go get a Trailmaster Sport 27 turn 550. It's, you put it in and put a pinion on it and drive it. And it's got bearings, and it's got a lot of torque, more torque than any other motor tested. Its smoothness is right there. It's millimeters away. But I think that a big blank silver can that I had to file to get it to fit perfectly suits the spirit of the Vanimal. And that's the motor that's going to stay in there. The Banana is going to get the Trailmaster Sport, which I think will be a fantastic improvement over the 16 turn 540 that's in there now. So, what have we learned? We've learned that I have a lot of homeless motors now. There's a couple more. There's a Sport Tuned. I got to do something. Oh, and another, like this one's going in one, but then another one's coming out. I don't know. Do I got to build some drift cars or something? I don't know what I'm going to do with all these brushed motors, except for now, just dump them in a box. And like I say, for the purposes of this test, I bought this one, and this one, and this one, and that one. I spent like $70. Like I had bought this previously, but we'll throw that in there. We're still under 100 for what I spent in motors, and some are very good, and some are eh. This is probably the leader of eh. I think that Reedy Crawler 550 is the one that I would least recommend. I would rather have a Mabuchi than that. So there you have it. Thus ends episode 3. There will be an episode 4. Episode 4 will be a bit of a hodgepodge where the gearing gets changed in here to see how much that can improve things. I'm going to see what happens when you put a torque sleeve on a 540. Let's find that out. And the one off the Johnson is the beefiest of the torque sleeves. I'm also going to kind of fiddle with, I have clearance on this motor all the way around, except for that little spot right up there, which is why it won't fit with a sleeve. So what if I just get the saw and just take it down to about 2/3 of a sleeve. As long as I leave that little bumpy that holds into the can, it should still work. So that sleeve will probably go back on there, hopefully. Anyway, enough talking for this one. There'll be more talking in the next one. Thanks for watching.